All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick and a very accomplished guest who has combined 6 more Grand Slams than me and Drew. And that feels low. It feels low. It feels more like 15 or thereabouts. And that is Rennae Stubbs. Thanks very much for joining us, Rennae. How's it going?
You are more than welcome, guys. It's going really well. It's a little rainy here in New York, but I'm excited. I'm going to the Liberty game tonight. Got my shirt on, ready to go.
There you go.
But before that, of course, the draw came out for the French, so I'm pumped about that.
Indeed. And let's get stuck into it. I want to talk through some of these quarters on the women's side. And let's start off with quarter one, which features Iga Swiatek, who is everything orbits around Iga when we talk about the French. Not quite into 2009 Rafael Nadal territory, but not that far off. She is a heavy favorite, minus 400 to win her quarter, but she has Danielle Collins in her quarter, who is red hot at the moment. Marketa Vondrousova as well, Naomi Osaka, some big names here. Do you think there is any chance, Rennae, that Iga doesn't get out of this quarter?
No, I don't think there's any chance that anyone beats her in this tournament. I think she has to have just one of those days where she gets overwhelmingly nervous, or things don't work, and she plays a big hitter that maybe finds a way to sort of get on top of her early and make her feel uncomfortable. Because look, we all know she's a bit anxious on the court. She gets a little bit flustered, but when she's on clay, it's almost like her anxiety level drops so much because she knows worst case scenario, she can take a step back. She can give herself a little bit more time. And, unquestioned, I mean, there's no doubt that other than maybe Coco Gauff, she's the best mover on the tennis court. It's just outstanding how well she moves and gets the ball back in the court, and she just feels so comfortable out there. So I don't see anyone beating her, particularly in that quarter. Although Danielle, look, she's had an unbelievable, let's face it, unbelievable year. So if anyone has the chutzpah, it's definitely her.
I like it. Chutzpah is a great word. And we talked about it yesterday. I have staked Iga to not just win the tournament, but to win without dropping a set, because I have her right now rated that much higher over their next best player.
Wow, that's a good call, I think.
It's a big price too. I got 650 plus 650 there. So that'll be the punny pot for me in the women's side of the draw. Although and kind of to Jay's point at the top, she's getting into that rare air with Nadal. And I was like, Nadal went off minus 400 pre-tournament to win 2009. And it's tough to imagine Iga ever getting there, but that's actually because of the format more than the quality. Right? Yes. They play best of 3 as opposed to Nadal best of 5. So it was just going to be that much tougher to get by Nadal, which is why his price was outrageous back in the day. So I actually don't think the separation is that great. The numbers would say Iga is at her career peak right now. Does that check out with what you're seeing?
I think she's at her career peak as it will be right now, but I think she's only going to. I think she's like Rafa, only going to get better. I had to put my glasses on, guys, because when you put those odds up, I was like, "What are those?" So I didn't want to miss out on what they were. But look, the bottom line is Iga, particularly in the last couple of weeks, just winning Madrid, winning Rome, and looking so good. Madrid was one of the best, if not the best, match of the year on the women's side. But the fact that she's minus 400 really is just indicative of that she is so much better than everyone else, particularly in that quarter of the court. She might play Osaka in the second round, but look, Naomi's never been real comfortable on the clay. Her movement on the clay is a little bit dodgy, and you have to have patience. And if you don't have patience, you've got to figure out how to move. But when Maria Sharapova won and talked about being a cow on ice, it feels like for her on clay. Maria's a big hitter of the ball, right? So she didn't really have to move around all that much. She was dictating with the serve, great kick serve, great return of the ball. Whereas Iga can play someone like a Maria Sharapova, a big hitter like a Swiatek, like a Sabalenka, like a Danielle Collins, and just make one more ball back in the court. And then as soon as she gets defensively back into the point, bang, she can just turn around and hit a winner from anywhere. I mean, we saw that in that match in Madrid when she was down 2 match points. Yeah. She had a beautiful kick serve out wide and just went smack right into the open court. She's just so much more anxiety less on the clay than she is on a hard court.
Incredible. Okay. Well, I have no disagreement whatsoever here. But you did bring up Coco Gauff, and she is the favorite right now for Q2, coming off of a finish to last season that was just, magical. Has had a difficult time so far in 2024 meeting that level, however, and in particular, really just couldn't match Iga on clay at Rome, which I think was kind of all you needed to tell yourself about whether her chances are of getting a title here. However, Q2 pretty weak, I think, top to bottom. Do you agree with that? And if not, Coco, who do you have eyes for in Q2?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt about it. I mean, for me, Coco is the player that will probably get through that section of the draw, because even when Coco's having a bad day, like double folding like 12, 13, 14 times, which guess what? She is doing on the regular, which is a little bit concerning for me. She still manages. I mean, I know Brad Gilbert's coaching her, so she is literally the epitome of winning ugly sometimes at the moment. And so, for me, she's definitely the player that will get through that section of the draw. Look, Ostapenko is a former French Open champion. We know what she can do on any given day. She can beat literally anyone in the world. I tell you who's pulling for everyone else in that section of the draw. It's Iga Swiatek, because about the only person she can't beat is Ostapenko. So just because she's so unpredictable, if the ball is going in, she is unbelievable. And of course, Caroline Garcia to get through that section of the draw. Look, in France, she's going to have incredible support. She either plays lights out or she's horrific. So similar to Ostapenko, those two could surprise and get through the draw. Obviously, Ostapenko is probably the outsider in that section to get through over Coco. But on any given day, you never know. And with Coco, though, the clay helps her forehand a little bit. But more for me, the concern is the second serve. It has just been I love Coco, so I hate saying negative things about her because I think she's just fantastic in every sense. But her second serve is so bad right now. It's so vulnerable.
Yep. No, I think that's fair. I think with Caroline Garcia, who's 22-1 to win this quarter, she's the type of person that you like backing at a big price, because when she is on, she's as good as anyone in the world. I think about her run a couple of years ago to the US Open semifinals, where it really looked like she was going to make the final, and then and she beat Coco Gauff in very impressive fashion in that tournament. Then it just all fell apart against Ons Jabeur. But she has a lot of upside as well. Beatrice Haddad-Maia has not been in great form of late, but think back to last year where she was in the semis at Roland Garros, and she really gave Iga a tough semi. I thought she probably should have won the second set and then loses in a long tiebreak. But yeah, it's interesting, Rennae, hearing you talk about Iga, because she does have this aura of dominance at the moment, but at the same time, for someone who is so overwhelmingly dominant, she does have these sets where it just falls apart. And it hasn't happened a great deal, but I think back to that final last year against Mukova, where Iga really seemed to want to give that away for a stretch, and she was able to gut through it and ultimately prevail. But it does seem like she can have these demons kind of start swirling inside of her a little bit. But I think as she gets older and more experienced, that those may well calm down. One person who has taken advantage of those demons at a time, think back to the Australian Open a couple of years ago, is Elena Rybakina, who is -125, so slightly odds on to win quarter three, in there with the likes of Xinwen Zhang, Svitolina, Paolini. Do you think this is Rybakina's quarter to lose, or do you think that could be a surprise?
No, absolutely. I think Chinwen has a chance. She has proven how well she can play on clay, as in the past. She's certainly took Iga Swiatek to a tough match a couple of years ago, and her game suits sort of playing on clay because she needs a little bit more time with extreme forehand grip. Rybakina is the player to beat without question in this section of the draw, as long as she stays healthy and isn't puking over a toilet somewhere. I mean, it's this girl can't catch a break whether it's either injuries or sicknesses. She's pulled out of a couple of events this year due to illness. So I don't know what's going on with her. She needs to get on the probiotics on the regular basis. But look, when she's on, she's arguably the best player in the world. She serves huge. Her forehand has a little bit more time, so she can hit it. I feel like her forehand breaks down, and that's her weakness. But in general terms, she is by far the best player in the section of the draw. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if she gets through this section of the draw, because she is, if she stays healthy and not sick, by far the best player.
Yeah, the issues for her started here last year. This has been a calendar year now where she just has been a little bit off. And honestly, I've seen the practice film of her with Sabalenka. She looks slight. I don't really know what's going on with her team overall. It doesn't have great vibes, if we're being honest. And that said, she also is not really like taking advantage of when she is clearly the better player in the early stages of some of these tournaments and playing third sets that are not necessary. And the draw that she got here, no one that can beat her, but definitely people that can push her to 3. So she may be ultimately out of gas before she really can contend. And it's a shame because I feel like if she is in form, she is probably more of a threat to Iga than the 2 seed Sabalenka, but that's just personal opinion, I guess. Do you think Sabalenka comes through clean kill in quarter 4, or are there parts of her game that you think are vulnerable on clay?
Look, I don't think so. I think that, for some reason, the French Open's clay is so beautiful and perfect. I don't know how to describe it to people that have never stepped on it or played on it. And when you play on other surfaces, it's a little bit more granularly, a little bit more unusual bounces. The French Open clay is just so perfect. Every bounce is great. So it doesn't really affect, and the players that aren't technically clay court specialists can really play well on clay as long as they're serving well. And Sabalenka, I mean, look, if she's serving well, she overpowers anyone on any given day. The serve is going in the court now. The forehand, she has a bit more time. She can set up and go for it on clay. So look, she has Andreeva in the first round. That's not going to be a super easy draw first up. But after that, I feel like her draw opens up quite a bit. The players like Badoza are in there, but look, Paula Badoza hasn't threatened anyone in the last couple of years. Maria Sakkari could be an interesting player in there to put a little bit of dough on, but also Maddie Keys. Look, she's had a pretty good year since she's come back from the injury that she did not play in the Australian Open, and she's come back playing well. And we know about Maddie, if the ball's going in the court, can beat anyone on any given day. So maybe a little bit of an outside punt on Maddie Keys because she's made the semifinals of the French. She's done very well. At Grand Slam level, once she gets through a match or two, Maddie's really hard to beat because, as I said, her confidence is so sky high. When she gets through a couple matches, it's like, oh, look out. So I think she's worth a little bit of a gamble on, but the problem is Madison just can't keep it going one match after the other. And someone like Sabalenka knows exactly what it takes emotionally, physically, what to do at night, what to do on your days off. And that's really important for people that have never won a Grand Slam. Like, how do you manage the 2 weeks emotionally? And players that have done it know how to do it. And of course, therefore, you have to throw Sabalenka as the overwhelming favorite in that section of the draw.
Yeah. I looked hard at Keys because I remember very well that semifinal at the U.S. Open last year where, some of that was ghosts of semifinals past swirling for Sabalenka.
Listen, but don't forget, Sabalenka has some serious demons on that court from last year, okay? She should have wrapped that match up against Mukova. What was it, 5-1 in the third against Mukova? That was
the worst loss of the entire tennis calendar.
That was, don't tell me that she doesn't have just as many demons as everybody else going onto that court at Roland Garros, because I tell you what, I would. Okay. So the price for Iga versus Sabalenka as our final, which would be 3 straight, is 4 plus 440, surprisingly. And I just don't see anyone getting the better of Sabalenka on the bottom half, even though I want to believe in Rybakina. The fitness is a question. Even I want to believe in Keys. But yeah, the Keys quarter price is nice, and she gets Keys gets her earlier in the tournament. She didn't have to kind of sustain excellence and then meet her at the end. So this is a tough call, but at plus 440, I think this is probably going to go chalk. Jay, do you have any other long shots that you have eyes for overall, or anything really outside the box besides what we've already talked about?
I don't think so. I think, from as we've laid out, it seems that Swiatek is clearly a tier above, and I think Sabalenka is as well on the bottom half. I will say, though, Rennae, that Aryna Sabalenka in global sports, she is the athlete who is most terrifying to bet on or against, because it can all crest, as it did against Keys in that US Open semi, where Sabalenka gets bageled in the first set. It's done. Like, it's just over. And then all of a sudden she comes back and she wins.
Kiss of death, mate. Kiss of death. No one, trust me when I tell you this. And everyone's like, and there's some players that be like, what do you mean kiss of death? If you win a set against someone 6-love, you should be happy. When you win a set of 6-love against someone is not very good, you're like, yeah, okay, carry on. Like, I'm going to win 0-0. But when you beat a really great player 6-love in the first set, you're like, oh God, it can only really go down from here because they've got to get better. So then you start sort of getting a little bit tense because you're like, oh, now it's 1-1. Oh, the match is back. You know what I mean? So winning a set 6-love was, I mean, me sitting there because I commentated that match for ESPN. I was like, oh, this is so far from over.
Don't
Everybody
turn off your don't turn your channel.
I mean, maybe if it's different, if it's Iga winning the set 6-love, because that's her deal. She just goes and she's like a motor. You turn her on. She reminds me so much of Steffi Graf. When she goes, she just goes.
Yeah, that semi, I remember watching that thinking like, and I think I was on Sabalenka to win that. And I almost felt better that she'd lost the set 6-love than she'd lost at 7-5, because it was just such a ridiculous outcome that it's like, all right, well, this isn't, I don't think this is going to be reflective of how the rest of
she was horrible.
And it's
she was horrible.
She had so much upside to still reach, and she did reach it. And we'll see if she can continue
doing that. It's one thing if you are a player that's playing great and your opponent's playing great and you do win 6-0. That's just like, well, I'm just better than them today in every aspect. But she was horrific in that first set, and Maddie was just solid.
Yep, no, I 100% agree. Before we let you go, Rennae, just want to quickly hit on the men's side, which is, I know it felt like for a while we've been building to this idea that it's Alcaraz, Djokovic, and Sinner, and then there's a massive gap to the rest. But now, like, everyone has question marks, and Alcaraz is the favorite to win the tournament, but he's plus 275. He's got his question marks around health and some other things. Djokovic is plus 300. Not coming in the most incredible form. And then Jannik Sinner has the most question marks of all with his health. It was up in the air whether he was even going to play. And then you have guys behind these three like Sasha Zverev, Tsitsipas, Casper Ruud, Rafael Nadal, who's 20-1.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, exactly, him. And then your Medvedevs, your Rublevs, and your Runes. What do you make of this tournament on the men's side? Because it seems wide open.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Coming into the French, you've only ever said one word, Rafa. That's it. 14-time champion. It's just insanity, those numbers. He lost 3 matches at the French Open. It's just, no one will ever beat this record. It's arguably the greatest record in sports, in my opinion, probably the greatest. The only one that'll beat it is if Novak ends up winning 14 Australian Opens, which is really possible, obviously. But I think Novak's the best bet in this, plus 400. Come on, this guy's won 23 Grand Slams. He knows, or is it 24? He knows how to win Grand Slam level. He is not playing well. Clearly going to Geneva to get some matches, which is really interesting to me. That really shows you that he's, because some people are like, well, is he into it? Like, what's going on? Like, mentally? I'm like, oh, he is fully mentally engaged. If he's going to play a 250, knowing that he could work his way into a Grand Slam like he usually does over 5 sets, because 5 sets is so different to 3. I'm like, oh, this guy is really going to get confidence, get his match legs underneath him. And when he does that, and he will probably win this tournament in Geneva, there are some great players still playing in it. But if he wins that tournament, look out. I would be putting my money on him right now because he is, to me, the favorite to win the tournament. I know he has not played well this year, but it's just so typical of Novak to come in stinking it up and being like, oh, yeah, remember, guys? Remember, I'm the one that wins the Grand Slams. So, and, clearly without Rafa being there to take him out, which has been the problem for him, for 7 finals, and he's lost 3 or 4. So I think he's the favorite. I think that Alcaraz has a lot more question marks on him. He's never won the French Open before. Novak has. And I think arguably Sinner might be probably the one to beat all of them, because I think he's played enough tennis this year not to be super panicked going into the French without a lot of matches on the clay, because let's face it, he is the player of the year so far. So I think a slight edge to Novak, just because he's won the French a couple of times, 3 times. He's won the Grand Slams. As I said with Sabalenka, they know how to manage 7 matches over 5 sets. And so I think Novak, maybe quite underneath that is Sinner, and then Alcaraz. And I think it's weird how they have Alcaraz as the favorite, because he just has really done nothing this year.
Strongly agreed. Again, he got a bad draw too. He's in the toughest quarter, so good
hey,
luck to
he
him.
Won't surprise me if the guy wins the tournament.
Yeah, no,
he's a freak.
But I don't know. Some of the Madrid tape of him versus Rublev, like, he's just not getting anything out of his forehand. So I don't know how you solve that in a quick turnaround. Yeah. Last quick question for you: the headline stealing news of the day. Rafa Nadal draws Alexander Zverev, the most informed men's tennis player in round 1 of this tournament. Can he produce any final magic on Philippe Chatrier, or are we bidding adieu on this early in this fortnight?
Fairly certain the only way he wins this match is if Zverev chokes up a storm and starts double folding up a storm again and missing his forehand. I mean, we've all seen it, but I think that it's interesting, isn't it, that Zverev is going to play Rafa on the court where he blew out his ankle so badly and put him behind. And he talked very openly about that he thought he could win the tournament that year when he was playing Rafa in that match. We all kind of scoffed and laughed. And I was, yeah, right. Like, you are talking about being the greatest player in the history of the French Open. But I think that Zverev, as much as it pains me to say this, he is also equal favorite to win the French. And the only thing that I see stopping him is his nerves and him getting tight, and his serve will break down and his forehand will break down under pressure. He gets away with it way more on clay. It's very similar to Iga, where it's not rushed as much on the forehand. He can get away with hitting like a crappier forehand. Whereas on hard court, these guys just pummel that. So I think that Zverev is without question one of the favorites to win this tournament. And I think the only thing that stops him is his nerves.
Yep. Well, I think all of planet Earth will be cheering against Zverev.
100%. It'll be interesting, guys. Won't it be interesting? Because when I saw the draw, my first thought was, oh my, maybe he pulls out.
Yeah.
Look, if you want your last match to occur at the French Open, you want it against a title contender, right? You don't want it against somebody who's going to be forgotten. And I think this is actually a good thing ultimately for Rafa.
I hope it gives him impotence to come back and play one or couple more matches at the Olympics. Play with doubles with Alcaraz. So hopefully that's. I'm guessing that he's going to lose this match against Zverev, and it just gives me hope that we're going to see a little bit more joy from him at the Olympics at the site that has just garnered. I mean, the guy has a statue there, so you know what I mean. So I'd like to see him end with a little bit more of a smile, and guarantee you he doesn't want to lose to Zverev. You know what I'm saying? So, but sadly, I think it's going to happen.
Indeed. Well, speaking of France and Paris and the Olympics and all of that, Rennae, we know you have a new digital series with NBC. So can you tell us a little bit more about it before we let you go?
Yeah, it's great. We're doing a series called The French Connection, where we're connecting basically the French Open at Roland Garros, and then eventually back to the Olympics on NBC. So the tennis, which I will be covering alongside people like Mary Carrillo, who we've already had on the show. So the French Connection is what it's called, and I'm hosting it with Sam Querrey, former number 11 in the world on the ATP Tour. Sam's hilarious. He's incredibly informed with all these players, and we're having a good time interviewing. We had Jessica Pegula on today, and we're going to be releasing that. I would say it's imminent, out any minute. And then we had Mary Carrillo on the other day, just talking overall Paris, Roland Garros to the Olympics. So we're going to have a bunch of guests. We are trying to get like the likes of Lindsey Vonn and just people that really encompass not only that love of tennis, but also, of course, the Olympics, which we're going to see on the networks of NBC.
Okay, well, brilliant. Be sure to check that out, everyone. Rennae, thank you so much for your time, and hope you enjoy Roland Garros.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. All right, Grand Slam tennis, speaking of, returns to Peacock next week when the biggest stars face off on the clay courts of Roland Garros. Don't miss the French Open, May 27th through June 9th. All right, from the red clay to the fires of hell, which is where I was at sweating through Wolves-Mavs game 1 on Wednesday night. We're going to jump into this one before we close out with little Panthers-Rangers. But Drew, what did you make of a very dramatic game 1, and then we're looking forward to game 2, where at the moment the Wolves are 5.5-point favorites in that one. Some zigzag at work there, and the Wolves are now plus 140 dogs in the series. So what do you make of game 1, and where are we going from here?
Yeah. I don't know why you were sweating it out. You have the right side, and you got lucky in that one. You got the breaks, and now I think the ball is very much in the Mavs court. This is there were a couple of things that stood out to me about this game. And you can blame it on the quick turnaround from game 7 and the fatigue and all that, blah, blah, blah. But Anthony Edwards does not have an easy out offensively in this contest, and his ask defensively to cover Kyrie Irving clearly wore him down. That's not going to change. There's no other way you're defending Kyrie besides keeping it on him. So there's no adjustment to be made there. The rest of the offense for the T-Wolves, like I thought it was going to take a couple of games before this was like, well, we'll let McDaniels and Kyle Anderson beat us. Well, no, that happened in game one. Like the Mavericks are already there in terms of solving the Timberwolves offensively. So I think the Timberwolves are in deep trouble in this series. The contributions and just in general, the quality of play from Derek Lively was pretty outstanding. I thought complimentary basketball when you had two on the ball with Luka with the ball in his hands. And then Luka just kind of clearly being the best player in this series, as he showed in the fourth quarter. Like basically everything you were hoping to see from if you bet Mavs series, you saw in game one. And all of the questions now are in the court of the Timberwolves, and the idea that they have answers to those questions, I don't agree with. I honestly think they are in deep trouble in this series. And where when we were previewing it, and I was like, it should be a little closer than the market thinks, blah blah blah. I thought it was going to go long. Now I'm thinking this might actually go short in favor of the Mavericks, and I'm trying not to be too recency biasy here. But I think as we go through, if you're getting points with Dallas, you take them, and if this total gets adjusted up, then we play the under. Otherwise, it looks good to me.
Yep. Don't want to get too optimistic because this Mavs West is the biggest position I've had in a while, despite the Timberwolves pennant that I've got behind me in my shot right now. That's Naz Reid related purely, not Wolves team related for this series. I think, if you're on the Mavs, as I am, the thing you take the most heart from is two stats, really. One, in terms of first shot, half-court offense, the Mavs had a 105 offensive rating, and the Wolves had, I believe, an 83 offensive rating. That is a massive gap, particularly when the second stat, the Mavs shot 6 of 25 from three, which is 24%, and the Wolves shot 18 of 49 from three. And now, the Wolves shot diet is kind of interesting. They definitely, Karl Anthony Towns in particular, missed some shots that he'd probably like to have back. But I mean, a lot of these Jaden McDaniels contested threes that were going in. And watching the game on Wednesday night, it outlined that in a way, an NBA game is the cruelest one to watch when you have a position, because I think when you're watching baseball or football, there is kind of an innate acknowledgement that you are kind of exposed to, randomness, that, Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles the ball in the NFC title game. That's kind of what happens in football, and that changes the outcome of the game. In the NBA, because there are so many possessions, and it's the best of 7 series, you feel like if you are on the right team, then the right team will win. And I was watching that Mavs-Wolves game one, being like, I'm on the right side, and we're just getting screwed by shooting variance. And we're going down to Kyle Anderson and Jaden McDaniels making threes, and this sucks. And so it was particularly cathartic when, despite all of that, they were still able to pull out the win. What I would say for the series going forward, and I don't think my handicap has changed that much in terms of thinking this was just a uniquely very good matchup for Dallas, where on the Dallas offense side of the ball, I don't think that's super interesting. I think it just is what it is. I think Dallas have an excellent offense, not like an all-world offense, because the shooting isn't great from, Derek Jones and PJ Washington, and they play a center who doesn't space the floor. But Kyrie and Luka just give you an incredibly high floor, possession to possession. And I think the biggest takeaway from Dallas's offense is that, Jaden McDaniels just doesn't bother Luka. Luka's just too big. He gets to his spot. He's too smart. He just finds, against drop coverage as well, he will just find his spot, and he's going to be comfortable in this series unless they start blitzing him, which I think we'll see more of. And then Kyrie looked as comfortable as he has all playoffs. I think OKC was a uniquely bad matchup for Kyrie Irving, just with the amount of athleticism and quickness that they had. And now Kyrie going against these drop coverages and going up against guys that he can find joy against, I think he's just going to look better. To me, the really interesting part of the series is on the other end, where Minnesota's offense just looked, frankly, dreadful outside of the threes going in against Dallas. So I'll give you my thoughts, but what do you think on that side? Do you think there's anything that Minnesota can do to counter what ailed them in game one?
I mean, if Gafford and Lively are going to play like that off of Luka, then I don't think blitzing's necessarily going help. And now if they go MIA at some point, and or if the Timberwolves get an especially impressive defensive performance out of their bigs, then we'll maybe reevaluate this. But I honestly think that you had as good as possible an outcome for the Timberwolves in terms of your defensive matchups, and they were still able to find ways to get it done with, as you mentioned, with efficiency on first shot in the half court, and that's hugely important. The Timberwolves offense looks solved to me. And I honestly what's plan B here? I guess you could just have Cat explode for a game, and but for what it's worth, I thought the defensive rotations were outstanding on him. So not exactly sure what he does to get going, but Anthony Edwards looks like he's going to have to run. He's going to run out of gas because what they're asking him to do defensively. I don't think you're really going to be able to count on him giving you a 30-point game in this series, and I think Minnesota is in deep trouble.
Yeah, I think with Ant, and to me, this series revolves largely around what Ant is going to be able to do on offense, where I think so much of what they succeeded at in the first 2 rounds on offense, and people forget, I think it's been obscured a bit by the fact that they won the series and Ant's stats were so good, but Minnesota's offense wasn't good against Denver. They won that with their defense. Their offensive rating was terrible overall, but even so, I think the way that they succeeded on offense against Denver when they did, and against Phoenix for the entire series, is that those 2 teams, Phoenix and Denver, they didn't have a good matchup for Anthony Edwards on the perimeter. And then more importantly, they just did not have athletic rim protection behind him. And now, all of a sudden, I think Derek Jones Jr. is a better matchup for Ant than anyone in the first 2 rounds. And the rim protection from Gafford and Lively is much more imposing than what Jokic and a ground-bound Nurkic were able to do to Ant. And the fact that Ant took 4 2-point field goals the entire game is a massive red flag for Minnesota. Also think it's a massive red flag that I can't remember seeing anyone as tired as Anthony Edwards was at the end of that game, to the point, and it's very rare that you hear this, where Reggie Miller on the call is saying, I think Anthony Edwards is injured. He's grimacing every time he comes up the court. And it's no, he's not injured. There's no injury. He's just got nothing left. He's asking for anyone else to dribble the ball up. He couldn't do anything. He ran out of legs. And you remember then that this is Ant's first deep playoff run.
Yeah.
He's 22 years old. He's never been asked to shoulder this type of load this deep into the season. He's playing 47 minutes in given games in the playoffs. That Denver series was incredibly taxing. And now if he's going to have to be chasing Kyrie Irving and then being basically the alpha and omega of the offense as well, that is an incredible load to put on someone in a very difficult matchup. So I don't really know what the Wolves do. I think this Dallas defense, I think their strength, one, I think that it's just the legitimate top 3, top 4 defense in the league, and it has been for the past 31 games or so. But I think their strength comes in being able to keep Gafford or Lively, one of them is always on the court, to be able to keep them low and keep them next to the rim. And if we get a finals matchup of Boston-Dallas, I think the Dallas defense is going to look a lot worse, because I think Kristaps Porzingis will break it. But there's no one, Minnesota aren't going to break this defense because they need Gobert on the court. Gobert's their second best player. I think the Minnesota offense might look better if it was Cat and Naz, because then you get spacing, you might be able to drag guys out. Though at the same time, there's always going to be a McDaniels or a Nikhil or a slow-mo on the court that Lively or Gafford would just zone off of. So I don't really know what the answer is there, and the thing I love about Dallas is they're like the anti-Boston in a way, where they play with so much intent and purpose. And I think they're extremely well coached. I'm not sure how much of that is Jason Kidd or it's just Sean Sweeney. But as soon as Gobert came out of the game, it was very clear that Luka and Kyrie made the immediate mental adjustment. It's all right, Gobert is out. Now we go all the way to the rim instead of driving with the intent to shoot a floater or a mid-range pull-up when Gobert is in the game. It was just an immediate switch, and they got a ton of joy on offense out of that. So I don't know. Look, Finch, I think, is an excellent coach. I think they will do different stuff. They will punish Dallas a bit more for blitzing Ant. The solution to that might be just don't blitz Ant if he's got nothing in terms of energy. But I think game 2 will look different. But I think Dallas has the upper hand in this series, and I would say your modal outcome from here is 4-2 Dallas.
Yeah, that flatters Minnesota, in my opinion. Because again, like the way to solve the Dallas defense is what the Thunder did last series, where they had SGA unlocked in the mid range, and he was just wreaking havoc. So the Timberwolves don't have that player, and they never have really been able to find that type of solution. So I don't know that the Timberwolves offense is getting off the ground more than what we saw with all those threes going in yesterday. And also, like, your point about the anti-Boston, I think, is very well received. That Boston is basically beautiful basketball playing idiots, and the Mavericks it's ugly at times. Like, it's not ever really pretty, but they're geniuses out there, and they're making adjustments on the fly. And Luka and Kyrie they have the experience and the depth and versatility to get it done so many different ways. I don't know. I think Mavericks was a great call by you.
Yeah. Well, let's say we're not home yet. We need 3 more. But the fact that they were able to get so violently outshot from 3, they lost second chance points. They lost the turnover battle.
They didn't even take as many free throws.
Yep. It didn't feel like they were playing that well. And then there's still, I think, just their process and their answers. And just the key is that Luka, I think, I kind of got laughed out of the room for saying this last night to a friend, but I think in a way Luka Doncic is the most unguardable player there's ever been in NBA history. I'm not saying he's the best offensive player, just like there's just no answer for him and what he does, because like who is a defender who's ever given Luka trouble? Like, he cooked peak Kawhi Leonard. Paul George has no prayer against Luka. I think that if you probably maybe the best guy in the whole league to defend Luka would be Lou Dort, just because he's strong. And I think that's what you need against Luka, more than length. You don't need quickness. He's not fast. He manages to get to his spot. I think slow-mo is actually probably a pretty good matchup. He just torps your offense. But Lou Dort is probably about as good as you're going to get. And Luka still was able to cook him in the last 2 games of the series. So I just think the floor that Kyrie and Luka give you on offense, even up against an elite defense like Minnesota, I think that should be enough to counteract what Minnesota, who, again, were the 17th ranked offense in the regular season and didn't have a good offensive performance against Denver. I just don't think there's reason to believe that this Minnesota team is a great offensive team. And if that's the case and this Dallas D is legit, then I think Dallas is just the better team. And now they have home court. So I'm hoping stay healthy. Luka rests his knee, and he looked more explosive. He looked better in game 1 than I think he has basically all playoffs. Then I think they should have enough, but don't want to jinx it. All right, get ready for the greatest spectacle in racing this Sunday. The world's fastest drivers go head-to-head for a chance to claim their place in racing history. It's the Indianapolis 500 beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, Panthers-Rangers. Epic Eastern Conference Finals matchup coming off game 1 on Wednesday night. Panthers win that 3-0 and are now minus 300 in the series. Rangers plus 240 as we look at game 2, which is effectively pick in the market. Anything that you like in this series, Drew?
Don't exactly know what the Rangers do to correct things. And I guess maybe you just hope that Bobrovsky doesn't stand on his head again. He looked great last night, and the Rangers offense looks pretty fraudulent. So, I think the Panthers are probably a bet on again, and this Eastern Conference Finals might be quick.
Yep. It's the thing with the Rangers is that they're just extremely mortal at 5-on-5, and they have been all year. And if you just don't give them power plays, then they're just not going to be super imposing. And Florida they've gotten a lot better at being a disciplined team, and Paul Maurice has talked a lot about that. And I think that, if the Panthers can play as much of this series at 5-on-5, then they're going to be in good shape. Also, the Panthers' penalty kill has been awesome. And if that continues for the rare times that the Rangers do get power plays, then I think it's clearly advantage Florida. They just have more talent. I think they're just the better team. The market reflected that by having, the Panthers minus 150 favorites before the series without home ice. And now they have the 1-0 lead. So I would say if you want to bet into the Panthers market. I think that the best way, not game by game, NHL Eastern Conference Finals, not the easiest one to beat. I think the series prices, I don't think there's a bet to be made there, but I think if you want to bet into Florida, it's betting Matthew Tkachuk to win the Conn Smythe. Talked a little bit ago about how I thought Tkachuk and Barkov were not the entirety, but a substantial chunk of Panthers equity, and I'd rather just back the two of them than back the Panthers Cup. Bobrovsky has surged a bit since then, and he's definitely a lot more in the conversation, but I think he is largely taken from Barkov's equity, where Tkachuk now has a 3-point gap on Barkov. I think as well, a lot of the Barkov hype, like recency bias, and this just goes away. Like it's going to be, it'll be, the recency bias is still to come. Projecting forward in the Conn Smythe, whoever has the better Stanley Cup will get that. And Tkachuk just profiles to have more points. Right now, the market is saying that he is like 30% of Florida's equity. I think it's more like 50%. Tkachuk's line, I think, is just the more offensive line that is going to put up more points than Barkov with Reinhart. I don't know what's happened to Sam Reinhart. He's really struggling at the moment to produce offense. So Bobrovsky looms, but Tkachuk, I think, should be more like 50% of their equity instead of the 30% that the market is implying with a price of like plus 700 at the moment.
Oh, that completely makes sense to me, and I hope none of them win because I would like the Western Conference to win the. I'd like the Western Conference to win the.
Yes, it'll be sad cheering against my Kitty Cats if they are in the Stanley Cup Finals. But yeah, I'm going to need Jake Ottinger or Evan Bouchard to get that home. But let's beat the Rangers first. All right, don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate us and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, thanks again to Rennae, Stubbs, and we'll see you next week.